A very warm welcome from the CercleS Executive Committee. We are very happy to have you all here to celebrate our special edition of our language journal, celebrating CercleS 30 years professional activity in the field of language learning and teaching. And this is one of our first events to celebrate the 30th anniversary. Of course, nobody would have expected that we would have to face COVID times and that we can't really organize a face-to-face party and special events this year. But we are going to have some text in the upcoming e-bulletin of CercleS from past presidents. And we are planning to have next year, in the framework of the next CercleS conference in September 22, to have a catch-up celebration and also have a round table and hopefully also other events as a party. So in the name of the executive, we thank very warmly all the authors who agreed to come here to be interviewed and to present in that way their articles. And we also are very happy that we found among the national presidents interviewers who are going now to share this experience of the articles with us by interviewing the authors. So we will have some greetings and emotions by our editors-in-chief, Carmen Argondizza and Gillian Mansfield, and then welcome greeting by Rebecca Walter of De Gruyter. And then the core element, of course, are the 4 interviews addressing selected articles. And we will just finish with some conclusions, the possibility to ask questions and give comments by all the ones present. So this gives you the overview, which you already had in the program about the authors, the title of their articles and the interviewers. And yes, I will now be handing over to Carmen Argondizza, who will be the chair of this webinar.
We're so glad. I'm also so glad to be with all of you. In fact, as Sabina said, it was our desire to get together once again as a community of people who share professional interests, and especially a community that wants to share common experiences. We're starting today with Celebrating CercleS. As Sabina said, this is the very first, let's say, small event, but small but important event. And we hope we will be able to organize others throughout the next months. In particular, we want to present this special issue of language learning in higher education that, as once again Sabina said, celebrates the 30th anniversary of CercleS. When I first proposed this topic and the motivational background for the special issue, that was back in 2018. And the CercleS Executive Committee that was in charge at the time accepted the proposal. I remember very well now with great enthusiasm. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Liliana. Liliana is here with us today. So Liliana Schulz-Adolna, she was president at that time, and Catherine Schaber, Heidi Rontu, Marta Verdi from Spain, Andrea Koblickskova from Czech Republic. Then in 2019, Gillian and I started working. Gillian Mansfield started working on it. We got together again after a little while. We have been friends for how many years, Gillian? So many years.
Yes, a long time.
And when we started working on the special issue, this coincided with our being invited to become editors-in-chief of the CercleS journal. We were so happy about that. It was, and it still is, an intense commitment with lots of responsibilities, as you can imagine. It is, in fact, a task that gives us the opportunity to, how can I say, spread the word about research research which is carried out within the CercleS community and also beyond, because Gillian will also mention this. We receive papers from all over the world, and we like this idea of integrating papers, research carried out by the CercleS community with other territories, other contexts. Obviously, this creates lots and lots of emotions in us. The feelings for feelings of being responsible, as I said, for the quality of the journal, of what we offer, what messages we convey with the articles that we select. So that we selected for the LLHE readership. So as I said, you can imagine how deeply involved Gillian and I are in this commitment. And here the support of the current executive committee comes about. I've always felt, I must say that I've always felt, and I feel, believe me, week by week, how close the whole board is to the journal. And whatever we do, whatever, Sabina Schaffner in particular, she's always in touch with me, interested in what we do, what we need, how we're carrying out our work, what kind of support we want to get. And together with Sabina, I want to say thank you, obviously, to her, and with her Anne Chateau, Mia Penis from Finland, Marta Verdi again, Tom Granger, and Zan. She's with us today, Zan Bester. She gives the whole committee great technical and CercleS as a consequence, a great technical, but not only technical, lots of support to all of us. Obviously, a thank you to all the members of the editorial board and the scientific board. Some of you are here today. Thank you for supporting us in the process, in the reviewing process. And thank you to Rebecca. I can see Rebecca. You joined us. You're here. Rebecca, she's been supporting us. Rebecca works at the Greuter, but I'm afraid that we need to say that she will soon leave and get, but you will tell the others, Rebecca. But anyway, thank you for the support that we got so far. Obviously, this helps us keep the ball, how can I say, the ball rolling, and gives us a great confidence in what we're actually doing. Thanks to the authors, even on my side. Sabina mentioned that, but I do want to say it again. Without their contribution, the contribution of the past presidents, the contribution of all the others, this issue would have been created. And so thank you to you. Today we're meeting just 4 of them. But I need to say that it was difficult, really difficult to take the decision, because to make the decision, because all the articles in this issue are extremely interesting and so nicely connected in terms of content with each other. I hope anyway that in the final part of the seminar we can meet some others or hear the voices of some others. Thanks to the interviewers, of course, who have accepted to be protagonists through this peculiar modality of interview. I'm sure that it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun, I'm sure. One final comment. Why am I mentioning? I've been mentioning all of you, and why actually I would like to have the time to mention all the names of all the authors. There's no time, but what I want to do here is to highlight how many we actually are. Maybe not too many today, but we are so many, incredibly many within the CercleS community. And all of us represent a different country, a different national association, different cultures. And then at one point, we have the time, we find the time to gather together and to discuss and exchange ideas. I think that this is the most interesting part of CercleS. Final remark is an emotional one, and it's about CercleS in general and ICLU, the national association that I represent. Alessandra is also here, and I've seen so many from ICLU. I think, I mean, I have this picture, this image of myself many years ago. I was very young and I was attending a national conference, an ICLU conference in a university in Northern Italy. I can't remember which one. And I was not a president, not a vice president, not maybe I was a researcher at that time. And there was this National Assembly where only presidents at that time and or delegates could participate. But I had read that day on the agenda that they were talking about one of the issues was this relation with connection with a European network called CercleS. And I got curious. So what did I do? I waited for them to go into the room, start talking, start discussing. And when they were so deeply involved in their discussion, I sneaked in and very silently, I sat at the back and I kept on participating, listening to their discussion. And just because I did want to know about this European commitment. I think everything started, at least for me, started from started on their occasion. I started attending seminars, going to seminars and conferences around Europe. And this is also why now in ICLU, when we have the National Assembly, maybe they don't have the right to vote, but we always welcome all the people who are interested, who are not presidents, are not delegates, but are interested in what we talk about, language learning, language teaching, and also practices and about a language center, running a language center. So I leave you with this image, but we're here again after so many years. So we're here within the CercleS community again. That's all from me. And Gillian, I'm going to give you the screen, I should say, not the floor.
Yes, okay.
And then we will go back to, yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. In fact, my warmest thanks go to you for all your help and friendly support over this initial period that has brought us together and to join forces again. Our collaboration, as you said, goes back a long way to the early years of ICLU. And I'd like to thank you especially for proposing me to work with you as co-editor-in-chief of language learning in higher education, and also to the CercleS Executive Committee's approval. Let me also thank Rebecca Waters and all her editorial team at De Gruyter for their professional and prompt support. Now, our job as editors-in-chief is indeed stimulating, but also a very demanding one. Over the past 18 months, we have received over 100 submissions to the journal, including the latest conference, the Brno conference. Which surely indicates how CercleS' reputation has grown, how it continues to do so, how it is being recognized further afield, how so many scholars, young and not so young, are wishing to contribute to the field of foreign language education through this academic channel that CercleS has set up. The first co-editors-in-chief were David Little and Johann Fischer, both present, I see, for this meeting. I remember as Secretary General of CercleS at the time, organizing a meeting with them in Göttingen to get the first issue for 2011 rolling. And I also remember a while before that, a very, very cold wintry day in Berlin, when Johann Fischer and I went to meet Anja Beck at the De Gruyter headquarters to begin discussing the launching of a journal. So look where we are now, 10 years on, celebrating 30 years of CercleS and 10 years of language learning in higher education. And please let me inform you that we have already sent in all the papers for issue number 11.1 for typesetting. So we're up to schedule, and still have got a lot to sort out with all these submissions. Almost every week we do we tend to get something in. Furthermore, what a better way to celebrate than with this special issue, which not only contains invited contributions from past presidents, but also from members and non-members of CercleS. This is surely what the sharing of knowledge and practice in language teaching and learning is all about. As Carmen and I mentioned in our introduction in this issue, CercleS is a community of practice with an ever-increasing number of people with like ideas, wishing to air and share them, wishing to disseminate their teaching and learning practices that take place in all kinds of situations. CercleS is also a community of practice, which often, as a result of desiring to share and develop experiential knowledge, seeks partners for future international projects. What I personally have appreciated within CercleS over the years is seeing how the other works, in the sense of the self and other, and this in relation to my home reality. As we all know, there are so many university language centers in Europe and beyond that are really and truly hives of activity. We learn about them not only through the presentation of papers and reports in language learning in higher education, and obviously in other language-oriented journals, but also, and very importantly, so in these times, through social networking in general, and more specifically, through the immediacy of their websites, many of which go further than simply providing basic information on the logistics of the courses they offer. And it's very, very interesting to look at everybody's website to see what angle they take, what particular information they like to give, whether they talk really about their own theory of didactics, etc., etc. They're really, really interesting to look at. So I do invite you to every so often have a little peek at things. The Language Centre website can present its mission. It can provide potential learners with a motivation to learn a foreign language. It can encourage them to embark on or simply continue along their path of lifelong learning. In this virtual space, language centres can relate how they face daily the needs and demands of their students, their institutions, and also of the realities outside the strict confines of the academic world. The paper written by Carmen and her team in Rende Cosenza is an example of seeking collaboration from others regarding the image a language centre desires to create of itself. Indeed, I do not intend the selling the self to be interpreted too literally in the context of the marketization of university websites, as the studies of Fairclough, Battier, and other scholars have brought to light. It's not principally a question of economics, looking for candidates and thus bringing in the money, so to speak, although we do need financing for our projects and for all our work. It's a question of using a website as a way in which to continually update values, teaching methods, and learning opportunities to address newly arising special needs, foster multilingualism to the worldwide citizen. It is through the manifold forms of communication available today that CercleS has the means to manifest its expertise and receive the international recognition it deserves. It has been involved in numerous projects. It has been called to share its expertise in renowned circles of language education. Please excuse the wordplay there, but it just fits. For example, the European Centre of Modern Languages. It has also been able to take part in the piloting of new developments for the CFR. For example, Brian North and language mediation. I remember feeling very proud when I was president of CercleS that over 70 CercleS members were taking part, giving their contribution. So the title of the webinar sums it all up. It's rather like the writing of a research article, like John Swales. A language centre creates and establishes its niche in the world of language education, taking inspiration from previous work. It identifies and develops its own contributions and foresees their impact for the future. Building on past achievements, working in the present in a future perspective will inevitably continue to take CercleS forward. Thank you very much. Just let me say, I'm sorry I won't be able to stay to the end because of all things, all appointments that I have this afternoon is my vaccination for COVID. So I'm sorry, I have to leave you early.
Absolutely.
But I hope you all enjoy the seminar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gillian. I know that you also have to drive pretty far away from Parma.
Yeah, it's on the other side of town. Yeah.
Arranging everything so that you could stay with us at least at the beginning. Thanks a lot, Rebecca. I'm sure you are. I would like to invite you to. Are you still here, Rebecca?
Yes.
Rebecca Walter?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Rebecca, please.
I don't have a really impressive speech prepared, I'll be honest, but I'm delighted to be with you all today. I mean, I'm the Senior Journals Manager for Linguistics at De Gruyter. I've worked on the journal for quite some time. I remember in the past with David and Gillian and now with Carmen. I enjoyed one of your conferences in Poznan where I met Liliana and Carmen and varying other members of the society and had a wonderful time. I think it's an amazing journal. It's the only society that I work with that is actually a collection of institutions, which is quite an unusual society for us. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate 30 years of the society and 10 years of the journal. And I was back 10 years ago, I was working with my colleague Anke Beck in the journals department on the books and linguistics. I remember the journal being founded with very fond memories. And I just would like to wish you all the very best and congratulate you on 30 wonderful years and 10 years of the journal. And thank you for having me along today. I'm sorry I'll be leaving the company at the end of the month, but it's been a real pleasure working with all of you on this amazing journal and in this wonderful community. So thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. Beverly is, she's from the University of the West Indies, and she wrote a very nice and interesting contribution on a Caribbean language center. And she will be interviewed by Mark Critchley, AULC president. Mark and Beverly, you can take the floor, please.
Okay, I'll kick in. Yeah, welcome, Dr. Carter. Bearing in mind we're all friends and we can have fun, you don't mind us calling me Beverly, bearing in mind we've actually...
At all.
Beverly and I have never met, but we've spoken and had regular dialogue. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm the current chair, president, if you like, of the Association of the University Language Communities in the UK and Ireland. And I'm the director of the Language Centre at Durham University in the north of England. So Beverly is joining us from Trinidad, which is not in the UK or Ireland, but it's a very valued member of our association. And I wanted to start off, Beverly, you've written a really good paper, really interesting paper entitled Taking Research from the Periphery to the Core in a Caribbean Language Centre. And this is interesting in the context of what Carmen was saying earlier on about the role of research in language centres. And in the UK in particular, language centres are not seen as research institutions. And there's questions about professional identity in terms of language teachers and research. Can I maybe kick off just by asking you a very brief question? How might you describe yourself professionally?
How would I describe myself professionally?
Yeah, As a language teacher or a researcher or a split?
Well, to be honest, I can no longer really describe myself as a language teacher because I do so very little teaching. I mean, at my core and my heart, that is who I am. But I describe myself as an applied linguist. I describe myself as a language specialist. Our university is, it's referred to as a comprehensive university. So we do the full remit of teaching and research and outreach and all of that. We do have units that are purely research. So for example, if you have been hearing about the volcano in St. Vincent, the colleague who is talking all the time is one of our colleagues, Richard Robertson. He is at a research center. The UE Seismic Center is pure research. So his function is purely research. Someone like me, I juggle many balls because in terms of assessment and evaluation, I do have a post which is a research post, teaching and research. And it may seem minimal, but it is sometimes a stretch. We are expected each year to produce a minimum of 2 refereed articles. So that and that is how you are evaluated in our system. So there has been a lot of talk, there has been a lot of discussion. We are all committed to teaching. We know that that's a core part of what we do, but our university has not yet moved to the point of having 2 clear streams, a teaching stream and a research stream. There is a teaching stream of sort, and there is room for some kind of progression in that teaching stream. You may be an instructor 1, 2, or 3, but in terms of your where you are positioned in the university and the contribution that you're allowed to make, that really rests very heavily on persons like me who are employed to be researchers as well as teachers.
Yeah. Can I ask then, I was interested to read in your article about how you perceive the role of research in a language centre. How do you see that role more generally in terms of how a language centre should conduct original research or secondary research or scholarship? And how do you see the link between research and continuing professional development?
Well, as I said, in terms of scholarship, the scholarship of teaching and learning, I mean, many of us as a language center have come out of a background of teaching, say at the secondary level, so that we are, first and foremost, we are language teachers, language specialists, and therefore we are very devoted to our teaching, and we are very devoted to whatever can improve the teaching. So that whole debate around the scholarship of teaching and learning, and how do you improve pedagogy, and how do you foster student engagement, that's an important dimension of what we do. But primary research, original research, you have to look at the outcome. And if the metric being used to evaluate us is publication in a referee journal, when we are assessed, we are not going to be treated differently from someone in the natural sciences who is researching tropical agriculture, tropical aquaculture. So that is where you have to be very pragmatic, because if you do want to have a career at the University of the West Indies, you have to be a researcher. You have no choice but to turn yourself into a researcher, even if you don't start that way. So with my young colleagues, this is kind of part of what I do, try to get them to expand their professional identity beyond being simply a language specialist, and help them to understand that in terms of their continuing professional development, I think we are all very keen to do the conferences and to do, But we have to do those things in such a way. We have to do whatever kind of research, applied research, whatever research we do, also has to be of the quality to get into publications. I remember I would give two brief examples. When I started—
still with us, Beverly, or is it me that's hung up?
Excuse me?
No, sorry, I froze momentarily. Carry on, sorry.
Oh, so, okay. When I started, when I started off as a young academic, a senior colleague said to me, you know, perhaps you should think about being a researcher in the area of French Caribbean literature, because I had done a degree in France. I had done a traditional maîtrise ès lettres. I had also done lettres appliquées, langue appliquée at the time, français langue appliquée. But she said, you know, perhaps you should focus on the literary side, because there is a lot of potential there for publications, for the kind of research that would allow you to grow in the academy. And then I remember I met someone whose name you may remember. She was Penny Sewell. She was at Birkbeck. She came to us as an external examiner. And I had just started my doctoral work. And she said to me, you know, you're researching listening comprehension. I understand this is something which fascinates you, you know, what is going on in the brain, how are people processing, but there's nothing really that you can write about listening comprehension that is going to make a niche out there. And you have to be smart, you have to think about that. What can you say that an international journal will want to hear what you're talking about? And the area in which I developed my research was in learner autonomy. And I found the colleagues in learner autonomy were very generous, kind of like what is happening here, and say, let's hear your perspective. Let's hear what you bring, what value you can add to the discussion by talking about what happens in your context. So it is, we do operate in a publish or perish kind of framework. It is very important for anyone who has a post as a lecturer. We use the British term, the lecturer. If you have a lecturer's post, you do have to conduct research. And it is a challenge, but even though, you know, people, some people get into it kicking and screaming, and some people take to it, and some people just, I love crime fiction and detective novels and stuff, and for me, being a language specialist and applied linguist, that's kind of, you want to figure out what is happening here, what is taking place, and therefore that gives me a certain enthusiasm for doing research and trying to find out what is going on.
Can I move on? In the context of your unit then, I mean, within CERC, we've got all sorts of different shapes and sizes of language centres. Yours is relatively small, I think, in terms of the permanent staff. How do you find the time? How do you get time allocated for you to be able to do the research and scholarship alongside the teaching? Or is it something you have to do in addition because you love it? Well,
yeah, it's something you have to do in addition. I mean, we advise the colleagues, young colleagues, that they should really have a research day. You should have a day, a dedicated day in your weekly schedule where you don't come to campus, you don't answer emails, you know, that kind of thing, and you set aside time to do research. It works. It works for some. It works less well for others because, of course, people have a full identity. They have families and children, and you know, you have a life. But as I said, your eye is fixed on the prize. I say to my young colleagues that not the only metric, but the main metric when you are assessed for promotion is whether you are conducting research, whether you have publications. And as I say, when you are being evaluated, yes, on your own with clear criteria, but you also are being evaluated across the university, where you have people working in the sciences and the medical sciences and who are prolific researchers. And you do have to make sure that you are not seen as less than, and that you are what you do at the university. There is merit in what you do. Yes, there is the sense that a language center is a service center somewhat. We are fortunate that the concept of a language center is not very common within the University of the West Indies. We are the only language center across the 5 campuses. And this is why I am grateful to AULC, because when I started here and I looked around and there was no one else who knew language center is, I reached out and I pulled my files, and I saw the person I spoke with was, I think, Pam McIntyre at Belfast, and said, can I consider joining you? Would you welcome me in? And is it possible? And she said, sure, we'll discuss it. And we have associate membership in the AULC. And that has given me a community of practice, you and therefore CercleS, to relate to. But so since we are unique in the University of the West Indies, we perhaps have a less heavy burden to move beyond that perspective of being only a service center. And to some extent, the expectation is that, as in any other unit, we'd be conducting research as well as teaching.
Can I move on then? We've only got a few minutes left that we could talk
2 more minutes
all afternoon. But
yes,
the last question, in the context of AULC and CERC and the fact, many of us work in isolation or feel we work in isolation, so the networks are very important to us. What would you say are the greatest assets of being part of AULC and CERC for you in Trinidad? And how do you foresee you might be able to or want to draw greatest benefit in the future from your participation in the network?
Well, I know I benefit by having this community, which I said I wouldn't otherwise, because there's no one at the University of the West Indies. But I hope I can contribute. I hope I can give back our perspective, how similar, how different, what happens in our context. And the sort of boy and bowls, you're talking the same language. People who work in the language center context, you if you wish, a shared perspective, which I very much appreciate. Is what makes it important to have organizations like this, so that we don't feel isolated in our little world, in our little bubble, but we are talking to colleagues who share the world, pluses, minuses, triumphs, challenges, who share that same space with us.
And I think it's important really to close on the fact that I know your colleagues, well, yourself as well, have been participating with us during the pandemic in AULC in terms of shared access to resources, easing anxieties. Have you found that helpful during the pandemic in particular? Very helpful,
because the pandemic, for all of us, there's a level of trauma that we faced in going into this, and certainly to have access to colleagues who are going through the same thing. I mean, it's the context might be slightly different, but there's always you can always learn, and you can always hopefully contribute based on your experience.
Well, Beverly, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Carmen, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for having me come in and
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Mark. Obviously, as we mentioned at the beginning, there will be more time, sometime at the end, for all the people to ask questions to you. But we're moving to Asha Mikwitz on student academic writing. She's interviewed by Libor Stefanek, and thank you, Libor, for being with us. Kasalk national association. So I'll pass on the floor to the two of you.
Okay, thank you very much, Carmen. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. And well, thank you, Osa, being with us, for being with us. We're going to talk about an article which is called Learner Autonomy, Self-Regulation Skills and Self-Efficacy Beliefs. How can students' academic writing skills be supported? And this really interesting article combines a lot of areas that many of us are interested in, and it is autonomy at one side, and then academic writing on the other, and in between, the students, what they think, what their beliefs are, and what their skills, whether it is self-regulation or self-efficacy, what they have. There are two authors of this article. It's Osa Mikwits and Maria Soyala. And Osa, we have the pleasure to have you here with us. Before I ask you a few questions, maybe I should say a few words about who you are. You are from Helsinki University. Osa has a PhD in linguistics and is a senior lecturer in university pedagogy. Her current research interests include academic writing and academic writing pedagogy, translanguaging and multilingualism. And she teaches courses in higher education that are focused on academic writing and rhetorics. Is that all correct, Osa?
That's correct. Thank you so much. And
Okay.
I'm happy to be here. I'm a bit nervous because David Little is also here.
Don't worry.
So I'm happy to see you in real life almost.
Yeah, it's great. Well, autonomy is a big thing, and it's great to have big figures with us when we talk about autonomy. So we know that the University of Helsinki has a fantastic programs in autonomy, and maybe we can start with the first question about why did you conduct this study? What was the general context, or was there any inspiration or need for such a thing?
Yeah, well, it was a long time since I wrote this article. We wrote this article, so I'm trying to remember now what was the core reason. But as you well know, my colleagues in the English section of the Language Center is very engaged in autonomous learning, and they have these autonomous learning, use autonomous learning in their teaching. And we wanted to try out this autonomous learning in academic writing. So, and I know, but at Helsinki University, or at all universities in Finland, students have to attend courses in communication. And academic writing is one of these courses, and they have to attend them in their own native language, not only in English, but in their own native language. This is because we want to, try to enhance the use of the native nation languages. So we wanted to try out autonomous learning in some of the courses. But research has, I have to maybe say something about that. When we tried to foster the students in the autonomous learning courses to take more responsibility for their own learning. And that was the main difference between the traditional teacher-led courses and the autonomous learning courses. But we were a bit afraid of the fact that students maybe not would get the support that they needed to enhance their skills in academic writing, because research shows that teacher support is extremely important for the students when they try to learn academic writing, because at least in our university, academic writing has some kind of mythical aspect over it. You never know how to write in university, and nobody tells you really, and it's kind of really hard, and at the same time it's a really very important skill to learn. because many students that feel afraid, feel anxious about writing, end up with maybe not being able to write the final essay in the end. They have taken all the courses, but they end up not being able to write the partial thesis that they have to write. So, so we wanted to see, do they really learn academic skills, and what kind of academic skills, writing skills, do they learn in the autonomous course, and related to self-regulation and related to self-efficacy, because these are skills that is important also in this kind of.
Maybe could I stop you here? When some people may not be really familiar with those two terms, could you tell us a little bit more what this self-regulation and self-efficacy actually mean?
Yes, thank you. Yes, of course. Self-regulation is about the students being able, it's a skill, maybe more, being able to manage their time, for example, using learning strategies, being proactive in their learning and the learning process. It's I don't know if David Little agrees with me on this one, but I think it's close to autonomous learning. It has very many connections with the concept of autonomous learning, self-regulation skills. It's all about taking responsibility for your learning. And self-efficacy is shortly about having now I lost the words. Being able to believe that you actually can succeed to succeed in their studies, in the students' studies. Yes. Their confidence, yes, that was the word. To have confidence of succeeding in the studies, yes.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting is the combination of in your research of looking at what their skills really are and also what their beliefs are. Could you say a few words about that? Whether it correlated, or whether you actually proved what you believed, or whether it was really surprising for you what you found out?
Well, actually, we actually thought that the students would be more successful in the student that had attended the autonomous course would be more successful, or it would be, the research would show that they have learned better, maybe, because they were more happy with the course. Because they were not controlled by us, the teachers. But surprisingly enough, the students in the traditional teacher-led course, they had the correlation between their self-efficacy and self-regulation and what they have learned in terms of academic skills, academic writing, was better, actually. And that maybe was what I was afraid of, because and I know from my own experience that my students, when I teach academic writing, I know that my students were very anxious about writing, and many of them told me, oh, my school teachers always said to me that, oh, you can't write, you're not a good writer, you're not a good writer. And they thought it was something, you know, either you're a good writer or you're a bad writer, and it's nothing you can learn. And they think that, you know, Ernest Hemingway, he was just born as a good writer. But and I tried to convince them that this is not the way. So I did a lot of these things during the courses, trying to, you know, encourage them, and you know, you can learn to write, and this is not, you know, rocket science and stuff like that. So I guess this is what shows in our research, that that some students, or these students anyway, they need a lot of support and a lot of encouragement in order to develop academic writing skills.
Okay, in other words, you're saying teachers are important,
I
which is
think they
great.
are. I think they are.
Okay, well, of course, in your research, there are areas, and you already suggested that in this context, teachers can be helpful in many ways. Would you have either any tips or what you found out, what teachers can do to improve these skills in students or to help them to be more confident and well, write better academically, or feel even that they write better?
Yes, I have during my 20 years at university, maybe I've given a lot of eye-to-eye, face-to-face feedback to speak to students about their writing, their texts, and I during maybe the first 10 years, the students always cried when I gave the feedback. And I was like, what? Why can't they just be happy? You know, I'm pointing out all that what they have done wrong. But then something hit me that, well, maybe this is not the right way to give feedback. Maybe I should just develop my feedback process. So I try to focus on what the students have done well and skip the rest, maybe. Or 80%. Look at this, you know, section here. You have written really, really well here. This is the best part of the text. Why don't you just try to write the rest like this? And they were like, yeah, I can see this. This is nice. Yeah, I see. And this actually worked a lot better. And the students, of course, felt that they succeeded and that they were happy. And I think the good self-esteem and good positive feelings, academic emotions are also very linked to study success overall. So I think it's very important to support these kind of emotions and feeling of success, and that you can, you know, like scaffolding more or less. And it's all about emotions, I think, when you're in the academics.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I must say that the article itself is really great, so I would recommend everybody to read it. But this interview has been even better because we learned more tips, which are not in the, and thoughts behind, which are not in the article. So also, thank you very much again. And we'll have discussion, more questions to you later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Libor. Thank you, Asha. Perfectly. We said 5 o'clock or 5 o'clock p.m. and incredible. And Asha, if this can help you be even more confident, while you were talking several times, David Little was nodding. So we for sure are expecting comments and questions about your article. The content of your article, Learner Autonomy, is in fact one of the top topics. We are all interested in this, and maybe we do need to say thank you to David Little, because he has been always inspiring us in this particular important field of study and research. Thank you again. So Asha and Libor, we're moving from Finland and Czech Republic to the UK and Switzerland, because Salwa, and I'm happy, welcome Salwa, you are with us now. I think there was just a misunderstanding of Central European time and UK time, maybe.
Miscultural understanding. Sorry for that. I didn't know what CET meant, and I thought it's
no problems at all.
Apologies for everyone.
We are so happy that we can meet you, see you, although at a distance. Salva's article is about evaluation of culture teaching and learning, and in a unified language program, teachers and students' perspective. And I think you are settled in Manchester, am I correct?
In Manchester,
okay.
Manchester Metropolitan University.
Metropolitan University. And Stephanie, Neuner Findersen. Sorry, Stephanie, if I'm not good at pronouncing your last name. She will be interviewing us, and Stephanie represents the Swiss National Association. Please.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. My name is pronounced Stefanie Neuner Anfinsen.
Okay.
The second part of my last name is Norwegian and poses regular problems, so I'm used to that. Yes, thanks for the brief introduction. As you already said, I'm the co-president of the Swiss Association, SSH-CHES, and I'm also the head of the Language Center of the University of Bern. And interesting enough, I did my PhD in learner autonomy. I'm going to interview Salwa Mohammed. Salwa teaches at the Manchester Metropolitan University. I have never met her, and I'm glad that you made it, that you came, Salwa. And I'm looking at the little picture now to look into your face. You teach mainly Arabic language modules, and you also co-teach a module Becoming Multilingual in the Digital Age. Salwa, you are British, but originally from Egypt. And you wrote to me that you have 3 adult children and that you even are a grandmother.
Wow.
And as Carmen already said, you live in the cosmopolitan Manchester area, which is a rich multicultural experience. And maybe that's one of the motivations to research about cultural teaching. I'm not sure. Yes, your article is about a study you conducted, and you evaluated culture teaching and learning in a program at your university. Students, minor students, language minor students there, they attend, amongst others, a language course, 2 hours per week, and a culture course, an obligatory culture course, which is called the Project Hour. And this is 1 hour per week. And in your study, you examined the perceptions of the teachers and the students of those project hours. And the question was whether those 2 groups think if the course promotes intercultural competence. And as a model for intercultural competence, you adapt Byram et al.'s model, which includes 3 components: knowledge about culture, skills, and attitude. Now, could you please briefly explain the main points of this model to us? What actually to this model is intercultural competence?
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Gillian and Carmen, for inviting me. Quickly, before I answer your question, Stephanie, I would like to just give a quick introduction about cultural models in general. As we all might know, culture is a broad term, and although it has been for long recognized that culture and language are inseparable, since the emergence of sociolinguistics in 1960. However, there haven't been serious attempts at conceptualizing the concept of culture in relation to language teaching until the 1990s. And the most famous of these and the most recent of them was Muired's 3 Ps model, which sees culture as made of perspectives, products, and practices. However, there has been more emphasis recently on intercultural competence, and 2 of the most well-known models for intercultural competence are Bennett's and Byram, Byram et al. What drew my attention in Byram's model was that it was descriptive. It describes and it gave like accessible definitions of all the components of the multicultural or intercultural competence, which made it easy to link to language teaching and to design in a questionnaire and in explicit points to the students. Basically, Byram's model is based on the fact that, or the assumption or proposal that there are three components for intercultural competence. Before I speak about the components, actually, intercultural competence, whether in Byram's definition or Bennett's, refers to the ability to understand and function effectively in a foreign culture without any stereotypes and with understanding to the target culture, and also understanding one's own culture as well. So the three components of intercultural competence, according to Byram, are knowledge. And in saying knowledge, he adopts the 3 Ps. These are Muired's products, practices, and perspectives. However, according to Byram, knowledge itself is not enough. Knowledge is important to facilitate communication, to understand the norms and the perspectives of the target culture, but they are not important since cultures are not static. They are always in constant development and change. So besides, it's almost impossible for one person to actually have access to all aspects of a culture, even to one's own culture, due to known factors like sociocultural classes, gender. So there are many layers in a culture. So it's not practical to assume that we will pass knowledge about the target culture to students. So on top of knowledge, students need skills to be able to adapt with any changes in the culture and with any conflicts. So for example, they need to learn how to interpret incidents or events, to relate, to discover, to develop critical analysis, critical cultural awareness. Another important component in Byram's model is attitudes. We all know that attitudes are hard to change, and it's not the language class role or the language teacher's role to change students' attitudes, which obviously have been long rooted. But what's the role of the teacher in developing students' intercultural competence is to help them bring these attitudes in focus, to be aware of them, and to try to work on, as I said earlier, avoiding stereotypes and not reducing people from other culture or consider them representations of their culture, because within the same culture, people have different views and have different behaviors, and also to be able to see their own culture from the other people's perspective. So that's basically, or in brief, Byram's model, and that's what attracted me to it.
Yeah, okay, thank you. In your study, you found that there is no real agreement between teachers and students about what the project hours where they are supposed to develop internal competence contributes to. They had different evaluations with respect to knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And I would like to ask you to summarize briefly what you found.
I made a questionnaire. Half of the questionnaire was generic questions about culture, like issues common in the literature, like the definition of culture, how culture should be taught or could be taught, the purpose of teaching culture, etc. So the first part of the questionnaire focused on this, and it was mainly open-ended questions. And so it was analyzed qualitatively. I used thematic analysis, which is a common approach of a common qualitative approach, where you focus or you try to immerse yourself in the data to find patterns or common themes that relate to your research questions. So based on the qualitative analysis, I found 4 common themes among teachers and students. And interestingly, the teachers and students agreed on this. So at the beginning, I tried to analyze teachers' questionnaires or answers separately from students, but when I found these agreements, I combined them. So these themes also were agreeing with the recent literature on intercultural competence. These were basically that culture is multifaceted. So students and teachers express that culture can involve values, worldviews, can involve education, arts, or everyday aspects. The second topic was that culture is experiential, and that was evident in students' interest in in watching films, contacting native speakers, using the net, in using assessment methods like presentations, research. Also, they all agreed in the fact that culture is deliberate. So although it's good to experience culture through contact, but also you need some kind of deliberate effort to understand beyond the code and to understand the culture in a deeper sense. And the fourth one, which I've forgotten now, I'll try to quickly see. I told that culture is negotiable. So that was through the emphasis of students on speaking skills. So they thought that the best or the most skills that benefit from cultural learning are speaking. And these actually, as I said earlier, fit into the recent literature on IC, on intercultural competence, which sees that the learning of culture should move beyond the teaching of the code, that culture is reflected in the daily interaction with its speakers, and that culture teaching should actually move beyond teaching culture as facts. As for the second part, which referred to the three components in Byram's model, that was a scale with closed questions, like five scales. And that's where the teachers and students actually disagreed. So whereas teachers tended to focus on the perspectives or see culture as important in learning about perspectives, students saw that actually it's the opposite. Students thought it contributes to perspectives, but teachers thought it contributes to practices. Also, there were other differences between teachers and students in terms of how culture can be taught, can be assessed. In all of the aspects, actually, in the attitudes, in the perspectives, in the skills, the teachers and students had different points of view. However, when it came to one of the last questions about the value of the separate or teaching culture separately in a separate hours, I discovered that teachers and students tended to, especially high-level students, tended to agree in that culture shouldn't be taught separately. I think teachers were a bit more practical. They thought that the purpose they teach culture is to improve students' practice, and they thought that they already teach culture in the language classroom. So they didn't see a lot of value or much value in teaching culture or dedicating a separate hour to culture. That happened when I analyzed students' answers more. I found that higher level students kind of agreed with teachers, like they also expressed views that culture shouldn't be taught separately, and they could have benefited more from extra speaking classes. But it was lower level students who thought that the culture hour was actually useful to them.
Mm-hmm. And how do you explain that difference between the higher level students and the lower level students?
I think it makes sense because based on our teaching and my teaching in particular, in most of the topics we used to teach in the project hour, like, for example, women in the Arab world or politics or economics, most of these topics we already cover in the language classroom as well. Whereas for lower level students, we don't actually touch on these subjects. So I think that's why higher level students thought that they already learned about that in class, same as students. Another reason I think, was the teachers' experience and conviction that they already teach culture in the language classroom on the one hand. On the other hand, some teachers actually had reservations about teaching culture in the language classroom in the first instance. If you don't mind, I'll quote quickly one of the comments of one of the teachers. She said, "Teaching culture is not easy if it is teachable at all. I don't think one can or should do it without proper training, because this can be a very sensitive and political matter. This kind of module tends to assume that people in a foreign culture are very different and can be reduced to one culture, ignoring individual regional differences." So there seemed to be also some caution on the part of the teacher of having to stand in a class just dedicated for culture and try to talk to students from the point of view of the knowledge transmitter, because as adults and as teachers, we know I am not necessarily representative to every aspect in my culture. As an example for that, for example, I come from Egypt, one of 22 Arab countries. So when I stand and talk to my students about culture, my reference is always Egyptian culture. So I'm always aware of that as well, and I always try to tell them that this is the case in Egypt, for example, and in the part of Egypt where I come from, but it could be different in other places. So I think these were the main reason for differences between teachers and cultures.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, as a conclusion, and we have
2 minutes.
2 minutes left. Yes. What do you suggest? In your opinion, what is a good way to enhance intercultural competence?
I think, like one of the sources I came across said, that language teaching has all moved towards learner-centered approaches. The same should happen with culture. It should be more learner-centered. We shouldn't, as teachers, worry about how can I represent the culture, or am I a representative of this culture? We shouldn't worry much about that, because from my point of view, it's a whole learning experience for the students and for me as well. So we all research. So usually before we go to class, I send to students the topic, and sometimes they choose it. We all go and research and read about it. I let them know that I am also not a specialist in that topic. So we all go and research. And in class, we exchange views. It's all about making things explicit, or making our stereotypes, our views explicit, not necessarily about right or wrong, or teaching culture as facts, and I should have the facts, otherwise I shouldn't be teaching culture. It's more about, as I said, sharing views, negotiation, the whole culture topic, or the whole culture actually develop and change through negotiation. So that's what we try to create in the classroom, rather than conveying facts or topics.
Mm-hmm. So it's about exploring and trying to understand cultural aspects together as a group.
True.
Yes.
True.
Okay.
As in real life,
yes.
As cultures develop.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we have finished, and I'm very glad that you made it.
Wow. Thank you. I am too.
Running in. Perfect timing, Stephanie. Thanks a lot for all your the interesting interview and the intriguing topic, Salwa. I'm glad that you, yes, you spoke about it. It is intriguing, and as you said, a pretty difficult topic to deal with. And I'm sure that there will be questions and comments on your article as well. We're moving to the last one, the last interview, and we're leaving the UK and Switzerland. Think about it. We're just behind the screen, and we're traveling around the world. Now we're going to Spain with Alberto Andujar, or Andujar, maybe I should say, and Alessandra Fazio, the interviewer. Alessandra, hi Alberto. Alessandra is represents the ICLU National Association, settled in Rome, and believe me, just a few meters away from the Colosseo. So at least we can imagine that we're traveling around the world. Please, you take the floor, Alberto. Alberto, that was another interesting one. Anxiety in oral examinations, in particular, if I can get the whole, just a second, title, Cognitive Text Anxiety in High Stakes Oral Examinations, Face-to-Face or Computer-Based. Please, the floor goes to the two of you.
Okay. Should I, all right. So, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay. Maybe I'd like just to say a couple of words about Alberto as an interviewer. Okay. And you're, as far as I know, you're a researcher and you work at the Department of English Studies of the University of Almeria, right? Mm-hmm. And you do research in CAL, computer-assisted language learning, telecollaboration, education technology, and language assessment. And I don't know if you want to add something about your research interests, something more.
Well, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. So Carmen has already introduced the topic of your paper, which is a very interesting paper, and on anxiety in oral high-stake examinations, and which I think it's an important topic and an extremely demanding aspect for foreign students and test takers. So this is an aspect I'm sure we are all aware, but I'm always wondering, what good strategies to cope with it. And as you were just talking about your topic, I'd like to start to focus and expand a bit the content of your research in cognitive text anxiety, more specifically, in this type of oral examination, and taking into consideration how face-to-face and computer-based examination formats affect test takers' anxiety and consequently their performance. Mm-hmm. So, and then maybe focus on the results of your very, very interesting and in-depth research. So I leave you the floor, Alberto.
Okay. Thank you. Well, first, as I was saying, thank you very much for the invitation. For me, it's a real pleasure to be here. Well, about my research basically comes from the idea that I guess like most of us are language teachers or have been language teachers, and I always have this problem of students in class which have a very good level of, for example, in my case, English, which is the language I normally teach. But then they get to the exam and they struggle a lot, particularly in the speaking exam. So for me, it was a big concern because, you see them in class and then you see them performing in the test and they seem like a different person. So for me, it was like I don't know what was happening. I don't know which were the factors which influenced this very or this lower performance in the exam. So that's pretty much the idea of just developing this investigation, which has to do with basically candidates underperforming in test. As you know, we have now we have a lot of different language tests going computer-based. It could be like this Cambridge Linguist Skill, for example, or some other language assessment companies elaborating just computer-based exams. But my point was, is it really the same just doing a computer-based test as a face-to-face one? It's like, are the conditions the same? Are the candidates under the same circumstances, let's say? So for me, it was clearly, I mean, I don't know, I needed to research this question because I didn't think it was the same, because we know that the contextual factors in exams are very, very important. So in any case, you do have this type of exams, and they do receive the same type of certificate, whether they do it face-to-face, whether they do it online-based. And my point was, well, let's try to explore if this is really the same. Okay, so I'm in charge of the research, the evaluation research team of my university, and well, we wanted to explore basically this idea. So we have like different exams every year. Normally, the exam we have is an exam which candidates need to get the certificate of their degrees, regardless of if they belong just to economics or they are engineers, or regardless of the degree, they need this certificate. Otherwise, even if they have all the different modules passed, they don't get the final the final certificate. So basically, we in this exam, I mean, there are a lot of situations in which we have like very anxious candidates. So the point was, okay, let's try just to create two different environments. So we attempt to reduce the students' anxiety during the test. And what we created was basically two different environments. As I said before, we created a computer-based room in which students took the speaking test orally just through a computer. So it was kind of like well, we prepared kind of like an automatic oral test, let's say. And there was also another room in which we had these two examiners as usual, two examiners evaluating the candidates. And basically we explored the two environments and how students behave in the two environments and how the students felt in the two environments. And of course, we know that if we read the literature, there is a lot written about foreign language classroom anxiety. But this was a different situation because it was not a classroom, but an exam. So, of course, we know that even in language classrooms, if higher levels of anxiety are going well, I'm not going to help you much if you are speaking a second language, obviously. But in an exam, it's even worse. So we wanted to explore this situation and what were students' reactions towards the two type of tests. So of course you may say, well, if the students take first one exam and then first the computer based and then the face-to-face, maybe there is a I mean, we could have a problem because normally once you get into the exam, you're feeling more nervous. As the exam goes by, you start feeling a bit more calm and so on. So we try to invert the order. So we had like half of our sample just starting with the computer base and half our sample starting with the face-to-face. All of the students did the two type of exams, but we kind of invert the order. So we couldn't say, oh, they were more anxious in the face-to-face because they started doing that exam. So well, we explore basically cognitive test anxiety during these two type of exams, and we have like quite interesting results. I don't know if I should comment on the results, or you have any question, Alessandra, before that?
No. I was just wondering. Of course, you applied the same protocol. First, let's say the computer-based, and then the face-to-face test. Then you also did research in psychology, because I read that you had also a team of psychologists testing for cognitive anxiety. And I mean, a question I was interested when you're talking about context and the environment. For example, what about technophobia and anxiety related to the use of computer or technology in general? Because, for example, I used to work with computer-based tests, and sometimes we do have this kind of problems at the language center. So I don't know if in such a situation, even though it was a protocol, maybe the students knew that they were tested for an experiment, for a study. Did you face this kind of problems as well?
Well, I mean, to some extent, yes. Because,
sorry if I interrupt you, because otherwise I forget. And in case they have these problems, does this affect anxiety even more?
Yeah, I mean, of course, our findings indicate that actually there is not one environment better than the other. Like, it's true that you have situations in which the students do not feel comfortable with computers, or they suffer from technophobia, as you were mentioning. But again, like, the two environments generated different types of anxiety or different causes, because or causes why students felt anxious during the tests. And well, if, for example, if I focus on the face-to-face test, like normally the students indicated that the presence of the examiners was just a factor, a cause of anxiety during the exam. As well, for example, feeling judged or evaluated. The students, when so that when you're doing, I've been also an examiner for many years now, and it's so that when they know you're judging them or you're evaluating them and you're looking at them, trying to evaluate the language, they start feeling a bit more anxious. Also, other factors we found, for example, in the face-to-face exam was just the proximity to the examiner. Sometimes when obviously now we need some distance because of the situation we live in, but normally in the exams we are quite close to the candidate, and this proximity made them feel a bit more nervous, and that's what we also found, and these were some of the responses the students told our psychologists. So yeah, for example, also the gestures even of the examiners, like when the students were speaking, obviously we train our examiners not to react to the things they are saying, but some of the gestures of examiners also made them feel a bit uncomfortable, or even not understanding the instructions while the teacher or the examiners in this case were giving the instructions to the candidates. Seriousness, a series of factors which basically generate a higher level of anxiety in the students. In the computer-based room, we also found some elements, like, for example, of course, silences that, or the silence created in the room because you didn't have a response from anybody, so there was no interaction. So that silence created or a problematic situation for some of the participants who felt more anxious because they didn't know what was happening. Also, impossibility of answering doubts because you just had a computer. So if you have any doubt or if you don't know what to do in a certain task, there was nobody there just to help them. Although the task form, the computer-based format was very straightforward. It was very kind of easy to follow. They felt a bit anxious because of that. They hadn't trained for this computer-based test, so even they knew that they were going to have a computer-based test. It was probably, for some of them, it was the very first time doing that. So they were not used to answering to a computer, let's say. Obviously, probably if we carry out the same experiment now, I believe the results will be, particularly in the computer-based room, will be a bit different, because I believe, like in this last year and a half, we have all get used to using video conferences and computers, and probably our students would feel even more comfortable during this type of exams. But of course, you had a student saying, well, like we didn't like this type of computer-based exam because, well, we felt a bit uncomfortable. No one could answer doubts, and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't say one environment was better than the other. So actually, one of the points I make here in this experiment we carried out was, well, should the two environments coexist? Should we have exams which address or which involve face-to-face and computer-based examinations? Because I personally, and after just seeing the results, and of course this is a case study which involves like 176 participants, which is not a lot, it's not a big sample, but it gives you a lot of indications, and you see that it's not really, they're not really equal environments, and it's not really fair. That's how I see it. Okay, so.
While reading, I was also wondering, how was the interactive task managed, handled in the computer-based test?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Even though I'm sure that in the future the two environments will mix together, the virtual and physical one, and I'm sure that there will be more and more mix of the environments, as you were saying just a minute before. Mm-hmm. But yes, I'm curious about this interaction via computer-based test.
Yeah. So basically, in this interaction task, if, for example, in our exam, in our face-to-face exam, the examiner is just doing nothing during the interaction. It's just the two participants just talking about a topic and discussing a topic. So the question was, is the presence of the examiner helping them just have a better interaction? And I don't really think so. I think that the candidates, it was one of these causes that they indicated, that they said, well, we feel nervous because we feel that we're being evaluated, we're being judged. So it is interaction just in the computer-based test. Just the computer just presented the task, and the students knew what they had to do. So there was a moment where the time just expired, and the computer indicated, well, the time has expired. So until that moment, the students had to keep the interaction going. Okay, just something that also happens, by the way, in the face-to-face. Like there was a moment where the students don't know, should I continue speaking? Should I stop here? I mean, has the time expired? All these type of questions that normally occur in the examination room. So, so of course, apart from the responses of the students and the interviews our psychologists carry out, which were very, very useful, I would say even more useful than the scale we had. We also had a cognitive test scale, which we used. Are you going to? Were you going to ask a question?
No.
Oh, okay. So we had this cognitive test scale that we used, and basically is a scale which is used to measure anxiety during examinations. So it's not, there is also this foreign language classroom anxiety scale, which is just for classroom environments. But we used one which was specifically used for examinations, and we just varied the scale just a little bit to include some questions which were interesting for our research, and we recalculated the whole parameters, statistically speaking. So we could classify students' levels of anxiety during the exam. And of course, if you want to know, the levels of anxiety were high, during the exam. Yeah.
Yes. Another thing that I was curious while reading is
2 minutes, Alessandra. Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yes.
So maybe going to some conclusions. I mean, after, okay, you measure and level of anxiety were pretty high. So what strategies do you think, what can we do to lower this level of anxiety from the outcomes of your statistical analysis? And from
so my main concern, first of all, is controlling the environment. Try just to control language anxiety and controlling the contextual factors, controlling the environment in which participants are doing or taking the test. In this case, like controlling the distance between candidate examiner, if it's face-to-face, controlling the examination room, controlling how the exam is going to take place. All these contextual factors, because sometimes we worry a lot about construct validity, about designing proper items, about just doing the best exam we can do. But in the end, we don't want is a construct under representation. We want our exam to measure what we're supposed to measure. So considering contextual factors, that would be one of my main conclusions. And of course, exploring how different contextual factors, because again, we just explained some, may distort an accurate evaluation too. Okay, and of course, my third, the third conclusion would be creating exams in which the two formats coexist. I wouldn't go for a full computer based or full face-to-face, because again, I don't think it's fair for candidates, and I don't think it's just how we should be doing it. Just fully computer-based or fully face-to-face, because the conditions are not the same, and the environment, the control factors are not the same. Not just regarding language anxiety, which was the case of this experiment in particular, but other factors that could be, for example, examiner candidate proximity in the room, or yeah, even how you treat candidates when they get into the examination room. There are a lot of factors that influence language anxiety during a test. So yeah, that would be some of my conclusions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And yes, I do recommend reading Alberto's paper, because it's really very interesting, and it provides suggestions and hints. Yes, thank you, Alberto.
Thank you. Thanks to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Alessandra. Thank you, Alberto. Really fascinating. In fact, I was thinking of oral tests through a mix of human interaction and computer interaction. And another thing that maybe we need to reflect on this. We received so many papers submitted from all over the world talking about anxiety in the language classroom in general. So this is something that we really should think about. Thank you again, Alberto. Thank you, Alessandra. At this point, Sabina, just a second, I would like to share the screen. I think okay, desktop one. Just a second. I just wanted to show, I like the Stephanie, Alessandra, Libera, Mark. We are promoters of the 4 articles, but let me see if I manage to move this. No, this is not what from Matter. I just wanted to show the whole content. So there are contributions by David Little on plurilingualism. I'm not reading all of them, but so many interesting topics: learner autonomy, English for teaching and research purposes, again, action-oriented and task-based approach of the CEFR by John Fisher. Sabina Schaffner talks about a laboratory for innovation. Liliana, a historical perspective of the growth or the development of a language center. And then what Gillian was mentioning at the beginning, this proposal that an Italian team is giving to you, offering to you a proposal of cooperation on the study and research of language of websites. You know about Salma and Asha already. And then Finland again on assessment in the recognition of prior learning with digitalization, the use of open badges in a language center. And again from Spain, English medium instruction learners, racial linguistics from Sharon Chang. Sharon Chang is based at Columbia University in New York. And then we know about Beverly already, and Jana Sorvari Saturusco and another Finnish team. They write about integrating entrepreneurial working life skills with foreign language teaching. I stop the sharing and I'll pass the floor to any of you who wants to make comments, ask questions to the 4 authors, and then Sabina, your conclusions. I'm sure that you... Anybody? Very perfectly timing.
Carmen, if I may.
Ciao, Sergio.
Thank
Sergio
you.
from Siena, you have a question from the beautiful Siena. Please.
Thank you. One question for Osha about feedback. Clearly, I studied in the United States for my PhD in English and worked in the Writing Center, and clearly the encouraging feedback is the prime directive. You always have to start from positive aspects of a student's writing. But then let me ask, in your experience, what would the structure of the feedback on things that need to be corrected, fixed in students' writing be? Because in my eyes, in my experience, is that a feedback, a corrective, let's say corrective to be clear, corrective feedback can be effective and does not generate dismay if it is well supported, explaining, well, you see, you are doing this, you are writing this, however, let's consider all the consequences of this form you chose. And I've seen the students usually when they are perfectly explained the reason why that string of words is not the best choice they could make, they take it positively. It's not a real issue. And then to Alberto, just a remark, last year I had an Erasmus student from Spain, and in our exam, besides the language testing, we have a theory exam. And when she came, and this is an oral face-to-face exam, it was January 2020, so before COVID. And the moment she sat down, she said, "Oh, we never do oral exams like this in Spain, and so I'm anxious, I'm tense." Maybe there is also a larger context issue if in a given university students are not acquainted to oral examinations, anxiety would rise. That's it.
Thank you, Sergio. I'll pass the floor to Alberto and Asha. I'm sorry, Salwa.
No, it was Asha.
Asha, oh, I got it right then.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. Of course, you're right. I think I was actually over-categorizing or generalizing when I was saying this, but of course you have to give corrective feedback. But I think you have to put it in a way that students, can feel comfortable with it. In my experience in the small Swedish community in Finland, my native language is Swedish, so it's not Finnish at all. And my students are Swedish speaking, but their Swedish language is really affected by Finnish and by English. So their main problem in writing is that it doesn't sound like Swedish when they write. It sounds like a mixture of English, Finnish with Swedish words. So the text can be really, quite hard to understand sometimes, even if their native language is Swedish. And this is of course a big problem, because I can't tell the students that I don't understand a word what you have been writing. So the corrective feedback has to be really, usually I ask the students that what do you think about this? What do you think about it? What would you like to say in this section, for example, if I don't understand it or something like that? I try not to point out, I try not to say that, I don't understand a word of what you have written. Can you please rephrase it now immediately? Yeah, I think it's a cultural aspect also, this way of giving feedback, this way of being to receive feedback, because in Finland I think that we are not use arguments, and we are not maybe to discussions. We are shy, and people are not that, they don't say much if they have nothing to say. Yeah, this is a good question. I have to think more about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. Alberto, do you want to add something to the microphone?
Sorry, my fault. I apologize. So yeah, I was saying that I don't know exactly which area of Spain was your student from, but here the tradition has been oral examination. Okay, and it's true that during the last year the tendency is going towards computer-based tests. However, I mean, regardless of the type of exam we have, as we know that anxiety is playing a fundamental role in their performance, we should somehow try to calm them down a little bit. Try just to be nice with them. When I talk with my examiners, I always tell them, like, guys, be nice. Try just to calm them down. They are very nervous and so on. So it's also our role as test takers to just to calm them down a little bit, so they can focus on the exam and they can perform as they should. Okay, but the tendency here has been oral examination. Now with all these new exams, because of the COVID situation, is forcing everything towards computer based. It's just changing the whole paradigm, and we do not have. Well, we still have some face-to-face exams, but students can really choose between one or the other, and they are going towards the computer-based mainly because of the because of the listening test, which they normally use headphones and so on. They can do it a bit better, and and also because of the COVID situation, which they don't want to be like near anybody. So so yeah, it's the tendency is going towards computer based, but we've been doing oral exams for a while, for a long time, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you, Alberto.
Alberto, as a side note, the students was very, very good. She got a 30 out of 30 cum laude, so.
Okay, good, fantastic in that case, yeah.
Thank you, Sergio, for sharing this, your experience with the Spanish students as well. Any other comments? One more, we have time for one more question or comment before I give the floor to Sabina for her closing. No more?
Carmen, I would like to
Liliana. Okay.
Yes. I'm changing a little bit the topic because thank you for your contribution and articles and of course discussion today. But I would like to comment and first of all congratulate Carmen and Gillian, fantastic special issue, which is anniversary of our organization. And this is also congratulations to the present board. But there are former presidents who came here just to say that fantastic story about us is the history, 30 years. And I joined CercleS when Gillian was president, because I worked for some time as treasurer and then became president to the organization. And I would say that it's of course networking, but it is a very expert networking where we can learn from each other, from different countries, different approaches to something which seems to be the same, like teaching, doing research with students, and also working in higher education institutions. So I think it's a fantastic issue, but it is also for us a time when we can reflect and we can see how we have changed, but also our organization have changed. Okay, Carmen, you were talking today about you attending a conference, etc., etc. And I think there are some milestones, okay, or key meetings of many of us. Today in the morning, Sabina, Libor, Christina, and many others attended Volkov meetings. So I think Volkov is a part of CercleS, or CercleS is a part of Volkov. I don't know how to divide it, but this is a big thank you for your work, because I know how difficult it is to prepare a good issue, especially when you have so many papers, and there is always the problem whom to pick up or to choose. Okay, so thank you again, and it was a fantastic meeting. I hope we will have some more in the news bulletin, and thank you for your work, because it's a great job. Okay, so thank you. It was nice to see old boards, old presidents, new presidents. So well, it's always nice. Thank you very much.
Well, if I may join in there.
Absolutely, John.
And again, congratulations. Yes, you did an excellent job. And actually, when a question I would have on some of the papers, or that comes up when I read these papers, is actually, would the results be the same in our country with the students having a different background? That is, when I read author's article, for example, or when I listened to Alberto, I was thinking, oh yes, okay, they have a oral exams tradition, whereas we have a written exams tradition. Would that affect the outcomes? And this is actually the nice thing about CercleS, is this seeing different views, getting different ideas, and reflecting on why is it in our situation this and that way, and how can we change it, how can we improve it, and how can we actually stimulate our students to work forward. And the other thing about this event is it's nice not simply reading a paper, but seeing the people that are behind that. This is something new, which I think should be continued in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joanna. I'm so glad that you you are with us, and thank you for your comments, Liliana comments. There are so many open questions, so we do need to continue. CercleS has to go on. We need the future perspectives, and yes, why not? So we will think about it. Sabina, maybe even for the next issue we can create. I like this idea that we don't only read the paper, but we see we see and we get to meet the authors. This is absolutely an important issue. Thanks, Joanna. Anybody else? Any other? What about other authors? Any other author who wants to share emotions or comments? I'm sorry that David Little, I'm afraid he had to leave, is not with us any longer. It would have been nice to. Sharon from New York, if you want to say something. Even your neurolinguistics article was really interesting one, is a really interesting one.
Thank you, Carmen. I just wanted to thank everyone for your riveting conversations and for organizing this panel. I have a lot to learn as an early career researcher. So thank you all for a lot of mentoring also. So thank you.
Okay. Okay, Carmen, I think we should come to
yes. Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
So, Sabina, the floor goes to you.
Yeah, I will be very brief. I want just to thank everybody for being here. The interviewers, the authors, it was very interesting. It was an experiment, also the format, and I've already got some ideas how we could perhaps even improve. So we also didn't know how many people are going to attend. So that's why it was organized the way it was, quite in an open way. So we are going to come back to that, but thanks again. Yes, CercleS has its 30th anniversary. So we are going to leave our roaring 20s and have become really, serious and adult, but still very interested and hopefully open to learn from one another. And I'm very much aware that this has even become more important during the last year of this very specific and challenging pandemic situation. And that's also what we have been trying to do within CercleS to offer opportunities for meeting in a different way with webinars and talks and also by doing our research. So we really want to support one another, and we want to support this through different channels to learn and to develop. So there are going to be more webinars in this year. There will be on the 4th of June a webinar about a publication from colleagues, which is about a publication, World Universities' Response to COVID-19.